Hello again, and thank you for staying with us. The 29th annual anthology, Have I Got GNUs for You, showcases the work of iconic South African cartoonist Jonathan Shapiro. His annual collections have consistently been bestsellers, and the latest installment is expected to maintain that trend. Zapiro is here to share more insights into the latest volume. It's good to have you on the program this evening, Mr. Shapiro. So it's great to have you with us, but your latest annual, I've Got GNUs for You, it does capture a roller coaster, if you will, a roller coaster year for South Africa and the world. What stood out for you the most, especially in 2024, both locally, but also looking at what's making news internationally as well?
Well, I just want to say the way that my title would be. I would say, "Have I got news for you?" Because probably the biggest local story is the new or GNU, but it's obviously I do it as a wildebeest, that kind of new. And that is, our election and what happened, and the ANC losing power, and the MK gaining power, and MK bleeding from, taking from the ANC and taking from the EFF, and all of those things. That certainly becomes our biggest, the biggest local story. And I always try and find something to sort of hold the year together, and that's so Have I Got News for You? The title comes from the old. It was a BBC show. Have I Got News? That, of course, was News NEWS. So it is a nice take on it. And then the other stories, of course, are the renomination and eventually leading to. I mean, by the time the book was published, Trump hadn't yet become president. But I mean, the idea that this flawed character, this criminal, I mean, somebody who's convicted of both monetary fraud and things like rape, it could actually stand for the president of the country that regards itself as the greatest democracy in the world. It is incredible. And then Joe Biden pulling out and Kamala Harris coming in, that's all part of it. And then I'd say the third big story that runs through it is Israel and Palestine. And of course, October 7th of 2023 is part of that. And then, the initial Hamas attack, and then what happened afterwards, and how Israel has behaved, and then, what I would agree is a genocide. Certainly of Palestinians in Gaza. And I would say there's one more little thread, and that is our rugby success.
Oh, yes.
Then, of course, there are other things, ESCOM and, all sorts of other things.
Yeah. I'm tempted to refer to you by your alias, Zapiro.
Please do. Please do. I'm happy with that.
With your permission, I will.
Yes, yes.
But the 2024 elections here in South Africa and the plethora of political parties, it seems to have been a significant theme in this installment, this latest installment. How did the chaotic political landscape, especially with the GNU dawn, how did it inspire your cartoons here?
Well, firstly, the new itself is I lifted from my 1994 cartoons when we had actually what I think is a real GNU, a real new, under Nelson Mandela. That was really a government of national unity, and it was a government of national unity to prevent disaster, because he needed to pull in the National Party. He was trying to sort of woo Buthelezi. Buthelezi had really stood away from the negotiations and only agreed to sign at the last second, really. And so that was what was needed. So but the new itself, I developed that in '94, and I did all kinds of things with it then. And it's a lovely character to use for this version of the new, which is really, I kind of agree with people who say it's a grand coalition or a glorified coalition, but I don't really care. It is, I can call it a new as well and play with it. And, I love doing the sort of animal things and what you can do with the word new dawn, new order, brand new, all of that stuff.
The GNUs, the theme of it. Well, as we continue the discussion, another individual who has featured quite prominently in your pieces is that the name of Jacob Zuma, for instance, or the figure of Jacob Zuma. You've been vocal about Jacob Zuma's influence in South African politics. In your view, what makes him such a key figure to focus on in your cartoons, particularly regarding his effect on the Constitution?
I agree. He's featured enormously in my cartoons. The first cartoon that I did of him, where I was overtly criticizing him for being corrupt and for being somebody to watch out for, was as early as 2002.
Yeah.
So, then when his financial advisor gets charged with bribing him and he doesn't get charged, it really becomes clear that he is a ducker and a diver, and there's a very strong resemblance between him and Trump in many, many ways. People actually have been at the apex of their country. Now Trump is again, really should have been charged more often than they have, and sometimes have been found guilty of things, and still somehow, as populists, both of them are populists who manage to corral a lot of support around them, and who make promises that they're not going to keep, and are actually anti-constitutionalists. So both of them. Jacob Zuma is a big threat to our Constitution. He feels that the Constitution it gives too many freedoms to too many people, and he'd like to curtail some of those freedoms. And there are people who are his supporters who agree. And now he's had in one of the cartoons I have the 11th rise of Zumbi, because it doesn't say numbers that well. And I've done him as a Zumbi, and his followers as Zumbis, kind of the Zuma zombies, since 2005. And here he is again with another incarnation of him. And he's actually managed to pull quite a lot of support and to drain support from other parties.
Cartoons and satire also form as a good basis of form, of expression as well, or kind of laying out your opinion. You've been creating cartoons for over 3 decades now. How do you feel about the political environment, or how it's changed in South Africa? And how has this shift impacted your creative process as well?
I've actually been doing cartoons sort of really for 4 decades.
Oh, wow.
Because as an activist cartoonist in the apartheid era, I was doing things for anti-apartheid organizations and for the alternative press. So, of course, there was a massive shift from that period where things were banned. And, some of my actual cartoons were banned. Some of the publications I worked for were banned, or certain editions, etc. So, there was a massive shift towards a kind of a freer society. There was first a transition period, and then 94, you saw many freedoms opening up, and we saw the Constitution in development until 1996, when it became a Constitution. That really gave us, I've had enormous freedom, even during times when I've been under attack from Jacob Zuma, among others. But so I would say that period, 94 to around about 2000, 2001, was actually a wonderful period, because some of the best laws were being formed, some of the best institutions were being brought into place. But I'm afraid that the real 1999, the arms deal, and then the HIV/AIDS denialism of Thabo Mbeki in the early 2000s, those things changed everything. Suddenly, I wasn't just an observer and a commentator, and that I was starting to be seen as an enemy by some of the very people who I supported before. And I must say that sort of adversarial thing has continued. I feel that now we're seeing the ANC fall from grace to such an extent that I'm implacably opposed to most of the things that they do. I think it's become a darker tapestry for me to work on. But there's still plenty to do, and there are plenty good people around as well.
There's still plenty to do, and unfortunately we have run out of time. But very quickly, Mr. Shapiro, as you reflect on what you've noted in South Africa when it comes to how politics has also changed through the years, what is your hope or wish for this country?
My wish is that some of the people who came out of the struggle, who are still around, start actually pulling their weight and bring in new, younger people who have real principles at heart, and that something of that great period of, you know, that period is sort of 94, 95, 96. We rekindle some of that, and people start taking seriously the wishes and demands and needs of the people, because I'm afraid those things haven't been taken care of. We still have a chance, but things are pretty dire. I think that the new is possibly a beginning, but it needs to go a hell of a lot further.